Welcome to Meeples on Meeples, episode 78. I'm Adam.
Andrew.
And I'm Brian.
As usual, before we get into our game of the week this week, we want to invite you over to our YouTube channel, our Facebook page. We're getting more active over on Twitter, so if you follow along there, we like to post links to our videos, but also some Kickstarter campaigns or some big news in the board game industry. So follow along over there and see what we've been playing and what we're interested in.
This week's game of the week is Tanto Cuore, and hopefully I'm saying it correctly.
Probably
it's probably not. It's a deck building game that's from Japan, in case you couldn't tell from the naughty maid theme and the anime style artwork. And it plays a lot like Dominion. The basic gist of it is, before we get started, we're just going to throw this out there that we're not big anime or manga fans, any of us, and we are aware that the theme might not be for everybody. A lot of people see the artwork and all over Board Game Geek, people either say they love it or hate it, or they judge it before they even play. So we thought we'd actually play it. So anyway, the layout is like this, and it's basically you are hiring maids for your house. You're the master of a mansion, a house, castle, whatever, and you're hiring maids, and the currency is these love cards. You pay them in love to hire these buxom maids. So this is the town where all the maids are, and you can get more love cards, you can purchase them, etc. The love cards come in 1 love, 2, or 3. The maid cards themselves, basically the heart at the top is how much it costs to employ them. It's called employing. Over on the other corner, the top right-hand corner, is their victory points. The bottom, there's 4 symbols, and those are the bonuses they give you when you play them. The one that looks like a stack of cards on the top left side, if that's highlighted and there's a number next to it, that's how many playing them lets you draw more cards, because normally you don't draw cards at the beginning of your turn. The hearts is if they add to your heart bonus, or aka the money that you can spend.
The love, yeah.
The love, yeah. The finger pointing is how many cards you can play on a turn, or how many maids can serve you on a turn. And then the bottom one on the other side is if you are allowed to buy more cards. Because on your turn you can play 1 card and purchase 1 card. And that's it, unless you start stacking those abilities. So with most deck builders, everybody starts with the exact same hand. In this case, it's 10 cards. 7 1-love cards, and 3 Colette cards. She doesn't really do anything, but she is worth 1 victory point, but basically she just fills your hand. So you draw 5 cards, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, after you've shuffled them together, and basically you can play. I have no maids to play, so these are kind of useless. I would have 3 love, and I can choose to buy something worth 3 love or less.
So you could buy the Kagari
Ichinomiya.
Yeah, completely slaughter that, but it's worth 3.
Whatever you purchase, like in most deck builder games, goes into your discard pile. You draw 5 more for the next round, and there you have it. The key is to get cards that play off each other, give you more bonuses, and then you want to explain the private chambers, because you can play them in 2 places.
So there's certain of the maids that are also chamber maids, and so you can play them for their abilities normally, like Brian just described. You lay it out in front of you, stack those abilities, draw more cards, buy more cards, so on and so forth. If they're a chamber maid, though, like, say, let's go Azure Crescent here. She costs 1 service point to put her in your chamber, and your chamber is off to basically the opposite side of your discard. So you put your discard to your right, let's say, you put your chamber to the left. Any person that you put in your chamber stays there, doesn't go back into your hand when you reshuffle, and the top card on your chamber deck may have certain abilities. But as you build up your chamber deck and you cover up a card, only the top card's ability takes effect. And why you want to put a lot of these in there is because some of these maids have special victory point bonuses that only start to accrue if they're in your chamber. So they might have the normal, 1 victory point if she's in your hand or in your deck. But if you put her and 3 or 2 other of the crescent cards over in your chamber, they run a bonus together, so that if you have all 3 of the crescent cards, you get the 1 victory point for each crescent card, plus 7 bonus victory points for having them in your chamber.
For having all 3 of the sisters.
Exactly.
The sisters play together. There's another one, I believe it's Saffron there. For 1, she's worth 1. If you have 2, she's worth 4 victory points. 3, she's worth 8 victory points. So again, that's only if they're over there. Now the downside to doing this is you don't get their normal bonuses. It doesn't count as playing them, and they don't get shuffled back in your deck. That chambermaid deck just keeps stacking, and they are worth a lot of points at the end. But you have very little to play with in your deck if you keep, instead of playing in front of me, I keep playing to my chambermaid.
And you want to talk about the illnesses and bad habits too.
Yeah, and this game, unlike most, because one of the common complaints about deck builders is there's very little interaction. One thing that this does right, which is kind of cool, is it actually lets you screw with each other, basically. So once they have somebody in their chambermaid, you can give them what they call bad habits, and that's just throwing something into their chamber that they can't get rid of, and it's worth -1 victory point. However, if once they get to 4 or more of those built up in their chamber deck, because you're purchasing them and playing them on other people, then they're worth -2 victory points for each card.
Per card, yep.
Per card. Or you can give their chambermaids an illness, which...
If you play an illness on a chambermaid, that chambermaid's victory points become null, so it's basically worth nothing.
And their special ability doesn't count either.
And their special ability doesn't count. So let's say the Crescent Sisters again, how they build on each other. If you have all 3 of them, they're worth 7. Well, if you play the illness on one of the Crescent Sisters, she no longer counts towards that 3-sister bonus.
Yeah, it's whatever card's underneath it. And like I said, that you never mess with that deck, it just keeps stacking up. So it's the card under it that was played on. So your deck will slowly build as you purchase more cards, you'll play, you'll try to score more points by using your special chamber, and that's pretty much it. It plays very much like Dominion if you've played that.
Yeah, and the way the game ends is when 2 of these decks empties out. So when there's 2 decks completely down to the bottom, game ends immediately. Add up your victory points, and the highest victory points win.
And the gameplay is 30 to 45 minutes once you know what you're doing.
Well, next we're going to talk about strategy. Really, I guess, big thing is your chamber, where you put your extra maids. And it's kind of a nice place where you can, I want to say hide your cards, because other players don't really know what you got stacked up in there. So at the end, you can really...
you can,
and that's where the vast majority of your points build up to.
The big bonus
the first game we played, you didn't utilize the chamber, and you got, and then it showed you got slaughtered. So that's a good strategy. You have to use your chamber and chamber your maids.
Yeah, you want to build those bonuses because typically I think they're only worth what 1 bonus or 1 victory point each. So
on average,
and you got a couple of the bigger ones that are worth 3 up here, but that's you really want to work on those bonuses and building up your chamber. Like you said, you can kind of hide from the other players exactly how well you're doing it by putting them over there.
I did try that actually just to get a ton of these ones because I thought, well, I'll get like 20 of them by the time 2 of these run out, and I ended up with like 13 total. I was like, well, that didn't work out at all.
Another strategy is do not be afraid to... I know you can only buy one unless you play cards that let you purchase others. Usually you can only buy 1 card a turn, and it kind of stinks to buy something just to bone somebody else, but it really pays off. Do not be afraid to buy the illnesses or the bad habits. And if you can play the illness on a particularly powerful or high-scoring card, you can really screw... Like, I ruined one of Adam's combos by covering up his last of the sisters, and he didn't get the 7 extra points just because I pulled that move off, towards the end of the game.
I'd also throw out there that, don't be afraid to... Although the love cards, don't get you any victory points or anything, maybe early in the game, and I think Andrew did this, is buying some of the 2 love or 3 love cards, so that way later in the game you have more to spend. You can buy some bigger cards. If you get the ability to buy multiple cards, you can,
It was very beneficial to get those larger, because I think I had 3 of these and maybe 1 of the other ones, and they all round up in like 1 turn.
Yeah, I
so
had 7 on 1 turn.
7 or 9 to where I could spend, and then I had a card that said I could buy like 3 cards. So I mean that helps you out.
Yeah, I mean it's with all deck builders it's the same. But have a strategy what you buy. Keep my what do I have so that they play off each other, and the combinations are almost endless because there are decks we didn't even use. You only have 10 out there at a given time of the regular maids, so there's more in the box you can swap them around with.
The other strategy is pretty obvious. Is just again playing off the combos of cards out there. So the Crescent Sisters. If you're playing with those cards, just be sure to know which Crescent Sisters you have, because having 3 of the same one isn't beneficial, but having 1 of each of the 3 is what gets you the bonus. Like you said, that's pretty obvious, but you just keeping track of the cards you have so you don't buy the wrong one and then end up... Because the game goes pretty quick.
It goes very quick.
Buy the wrong one on a hand, you may not be able to make that up in the end and get them all in your chamber to get that bonus.
Yeah, there was a few times where I was just drawing my cards for my new hand, and all of a sudden they're like, yeah, it's your turn. And I'm like, whoa, I haven't even had a chance to look at my cards yet.
Happened to me several times, which we'll talk about likes and dislikes, but yeah, it goes really quick. Another thing, it's not just about what cards you add to your hand, but what cards you can get rid of. Mm-hmm. Like, for instance, Sainsbury Lockwood here, she is the one who I believe lets you trade. If you play her, you can trade 1 love from your hand for either a 2 love or a card that's worth 4 or less. Yep. So you can get rid of some of the lower to boost your money if that's what you're doing, your currency, to get a card. So sometimes, it's with old deck builders, you start with a really weak hand. You want to get rid of those cards for the better ones.
Cleaning your deck out. Like
Yeah.
that Colette ones that you start with. Yeah, she gives you 1 victory point, but she really does just eat space in your hand.
So you want to, the only way to get rid of her basically, because you don't want to lose her, she's a victory point, but chamber her. You can chamber her, yeah.
Any other, real big strategies on this? I think it's a pretty typical deck builder otherwise.
Right. Let's talk our likes and dislikes. One thing I like about it is the compactness of it all. It's a very small box. It's just wall-to-wall cards in there. They're extra decks, so you can, like I said, you can swap them out and never play the same game twice. So there's a lot of game in a relatively small package, which is nice.
Yeah. And you kind of hit on this too. It does play fairly quickly. As in Andrew said, there will be times where, we did 3-player games tonight where I would be just drawing my cards up, getting an idea of what I had, and it would already be back around to me. Because the other players, if they're doing what they should be doing, is they're planning during your turn. Okay, this is what I'm going to do, so that when it gets to them, it's just put your cards out, take what you need, go on to the next.
And that's part of the charm is you draw at the end of your turn, so you know what cards you have in front of you, so you can plan. And whereas some deck builders you draw at the beginning of your turn, you don't have time to think, and you get that more analysis paralysis. But this is not prone to that, which is good.
I do like. Not that I'm huge into the theme of the game, but the artwork itself is actually very nice.
Let's talk about that. So, do you like the artwork?
I like the artwork, even though I'm not really into that type of.
I can appreciate that.
It's beautiful.
Good artists.
Yes.
It's pretty, very colorful. A variety. They hired, I guess, a bunch of, and again, we're not into anime, but a bunch of famous anime artists to do the various cards.
Which they actually list here on the back. They actually have the illustration.
Yeah, they give them credit, which is, if you're into it, you might recognize names. So that I agree. But that leads into the theme. That artwork leads into you're hiring maids with love. What about, was that a like, a dislike?
The theme didn't really work out for me. But, and kind of going back to the artwork a little bit, it takes up 3/4 of the card. It is really hard to read the print.
Yeah, that would be a dislike.
See, I didn't have that problem, really.
The symbols are tiny.
The symbols are big and they're in the same spot on every card, so it's very easy to read.
Yeah, but these special cards, like when I'm trying to figure out, okay, what's this one do? Yeah, I literally have to grab one, hold it up, read it, and then put it back. I can't just glance out and read.
You're talking like 0.2 font, if not smaller.
It's really small.
Really small.
It's true for some of those that have more writing.
What I would get into, and I think Andrew and I kind of agree on this, is the theme doesn't really come across, and that's, I think, a common problem on deck builders a lot of times.
I think on card games in general, it's because they're just cards. Where's the theme?
And again, we aren't really into this kind of stuff, so that probably plays into it a little bit.
But is it a detractor? People are always online saying that they wouldn't even look at this game. They're disgusted by it.
I think if you like deck builders, I'd give it a chance. Yeah. It's a solid game. It plays like many deck builders. Your attributes on the cards, they work well. I mean, the mechanics of the game work really well.
And they do. And the cards and the what they do and how they interact with each other makes sense for the theme. Mm-hmm. It's just because, you're just... And this kind of goes back to how fast the game goes. There'd be times where I'm drawing up cards, and I really didn't care what I was doing. I was just looking at the point value, playing it out, trying to get more victory points, and going on to the next turn. The theme really didn't do anything for me.
No, the theme definitely fell short for me as well. But,
I just wonder if it... I mean, obviously it does because people say it turns them off. I don't think it's that bad. There is one that has, for lack of a better term, the panty shot. Beyond that, they are kind of skimpily clad. Some of them, though, actually have a lot of clothing on them. Mm-hmm. For this I don't know if it's not that bad. And then you look at the box, and it just says ages 12 and up. So they clearly don't think it's that racy at all.
No.
It's something to be aware of. I would not let it stop me from playing it. I actually kind of enjoyed it overall. And like you guys said, I don't love the theme, but I don't think it kills it for me.
No, I don't think it kills the game by any means. It's... If you like deck builders, like I said...
It's a competent deck builder, yeah.
Oh, definitely.
And as we always talk about, the card quality on it, again, Brian sleeves everything that he owns, from what I can tell. But the card quality is actually pretty good. It's a thicker, it's not the linen card, but it is still a thicker kind of card stock. So it's... Do you need to sleeve it? No. But since it is just a card game, you're going to be handling them a lot.
Yeah.
It's probably going to get nicked up.
When you're shuffling and handling cards that much, that's why I figured.
What's the cost on this guy?
The full MSRP is $49.99. US dollars.
That'd be worth.
You can find it for regularly $30 to $35 online.
It'd still
probably.
be worth sleeving at that
Yeah.
point. Yeah.
With this many cards.
Exactly.
The rule book is actually, considering it's translated from Japanese, is not that big, and it's pretty straightforward. Actually, I read it and it made sense. So that's actually surprising and kind of nice.
And that's the other thing. Although it's tiny, font on the cards, the rules and how they work make sense. It's not one of those where we had to go looking up stuff online, going back to the rule book. It's laid out very clearly of what this card does when you play it, who draws cards, how it works.
And like I said, the layout helps. Once you know what the symbols do, they're in the same spot for every card. And if they're not highlighted, they don't have that effect. So it's easy to.
And the print
get.
itself, I said I couldn't read it from across the table, which is kind of a downfall. But it is printed on white with black lettering. It's very, once you get it close enough to read it, it is easy to read. It's not,
No.
Shadowed or anything like that.
And do the back cards, there's like separators for in the box, right?
Those are dividers, yep. So once you get down to the
nice,
divider, which is nice. It's like I said, it's
with that many cards,
package.
you'd be like digging out, and it's nice to have them separated out for you. Anything else for you guys?
That's pretty much
That
it.
about covers it.
Well, it's finally time for our reviews. Our scale goes 1 terrible, 10 awesome. With everything said, hopefully you watch the rest of the video. I'm actually going to give it a 5. There's nothing mechanically broken with it, but I'm just not that into deck builders. But in terms of how it plays well. The artwork's good. The card quality is really good. It's a solid game. If you like deck builders, it's probably something you should pick up. Your score will probably be a lot higher, but for me, it's just a 5.
Fair enough. I believe your average deck builder, I'm not a huge fan of the genre. I usually give them around the 6. I would say this is a little bit higher than the others, so I'm probably going to go 7. Just because it has a little more player interaction, which is nice. We were having a little bit of fun there. We were totally wrecking each other's decks that one game. And it plays so quickly. It's a full game, but it almost plays in a filler game's time frame. Like you actually feel like you played a full complete game, and you can pound it out in like 45 minutes tops. If you're playing as quick as we were once we got the hang of it.
And we played one game 35 minutes, but it didn't feel like 35 minutes.
Even our first game was just barely over an hour.
Right.
That was looking at the rule book, explaining it to you guys. Yeah. So I think deck builders are fun enough. I think that I like this a little bit more because they just basically ripped off a lot from Dominion, added a little more player interaction, high quality, reasonable price. It's like I said, it's portable. Everything we've already said. I enjoyed it enough. I'll go 7.
I'm going to be down kind of around Andrew. I'm probably a 5.5, and for a lot of the same reasons. It's a solid game, well made, great art, good quality, mechanics work, rules are clear. Not really big into deck builders, and personally there's other deck builders I'd like to play out there rather than this, and probably because of theme. Okay. This is a theme that doesn't really hook me. I'm not really that big into it. I didn't feel like it came across all that well. But there might be other deck builders I'd be willing to play because the theme is something more interesting to me. Like Street Fighter's not a great example, but I'm more into that kind of stuff, like video games, fighting games back in the day. That draws me in a little bit more. This, I could take it or leave it. I would play it because it is quick, solid mechanics, but it's just a 5.5 for me.
I would maybe throw out there, if you're an anime fan or a lover of manga or whatever, the Japanese culture, I think you would probably bump this up to almost a must-own.
Yeah.
Deck building is a genre that I think almost everybody who has multiple board games has at least one or two or wants at least something in their collection that's a deck builder. And this would be, if you love anime, buy this. Is that
that's probably
fairly safe bet, you think?
For the artwork alone, really.
Unless you just really hate deck builders.
Exactly, because of all the artists and stuff. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're into that culture anyway, and you know those people. If questioning the theme, don't even bother. If you already think you're going to be turned off just from the sounds of, it's maids and love cards and blah, 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 I don't think there's any reason to even consider purchasing it with so many deck builders out there.
Well, that's our review of, how are we pronouncing it?
Tanto Cuore.
Tanto Cuore. Check back next week to see what we've been playing.